Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be going over the changes coming to White Mage in Final Fantasy XIV's next expansion, Stormblood. Now the footage you're seeing here is actually me playing a new dungeon in Stormblood, the level 64 dungeon. I'm healing it as a White Mage, and this footage comes out of the recent North American media tour I attended a couple months ago. Now keep in mind the dungeon's only level 64, so don't get to use all the new skills, and some of them are after level 64, but I'll still give you the rundown on all the changes and all the things we don't know as of live letter number 36. Quick disclaimer, I'm sure you've already seen it or heard it in my other videos, but all numerical values, animations, the way skills interact, everything is subject to change. So don't assume that this is final before June 16th because they're still tuning it and they will still be tuning it up to that day. A few quick facts for those who may be wondering about other healer changes in general. Damage healers do is now based off mind in 4.0. Cleric stance is no longer a healing reduction or a stat swap, it's just a flat offensive cooldown option in the crossroll function. Another reminder, accuracy was removed from Final Fantasy XIV, so healers now have a 100% accuracy against enemies that are the same level or under. So when it comes to White Mage, just like all the other job videos I've done, we gotta talk about what stayed the same. White Mage, too much stayed the same, I feel like, and you'll understand what I mean when we go over it. Cure 1 and Cure 2 are still there, and the free Cure proc is still there. Regen is still there. Medical 1 and 2 are both still there. Benediction is still there. Arrow 2 is there, but Arrow 1 and Arrow 2 have been consolidated into one spell, so basically Arrow 1 will become Arrow 2 eventually, and you won't have them both on your bar. Arrow 3 is still there, and is still AoE. Stone 4 is there now. I'm saying that's like a skill from before because it's basically just Stone 1 becomes Stone 2, becomes Stone 3, becomes Stone 4. I'm not going to bring that up in the new ability section of this video. Also, the heavy effect on Stone 1 was removed, for anyone wondering. Let's see, Assize, Asylum, Raise, Holy, Cure 3, Presence of Mind, those are all the same. Fluid Aura is still there, but it no longer does damage, so it's only the knockback plus the bind. So you won't be running in range to weave those anymore. Tetra is still there, Repose is still there, which surprised me. Black Mage's still asleep too, I was really confused. I'm gonna have to assume that maybe these will be useful, otherwise why leave them in PvE, right? What's gone from White Mage? Well, only Shroud of Saints, Protect, Asuna, Divine Seal, and Cleric Stance, as those were all moved into the crossroll and are no longer inherent White Mage skills. Heck, even Stone Skin's no longer in the game, and yes, Stone Skin 2 is also removed from the game. It's not on White Mage, it's not on the crossroll, it's just gone. So what new things did they get with all these things that were taken away or put in the crossroll system? Well, White Mages now generate lilies. And lilies are only generated when casting Cure 1 and Cure 2. The tooltip says whenever you use spells, but I noticed they were only going up whenever I actually crit. So maybe you need to crit Cure 1 and Cure 2, and it's not just plain old casting? We'll just have to wait and see when the tooltips are all fixed. So what do lilies actually do? Well, having a lily doesn't do anything, but when you use certain other skills, it'll reduce the cooldown of them. So if you use Tetragrammaton, Assize, Asylum, or one of their new skills called Divine Benchen, the cooldown of those skills will be reduced based on how many lilies you have when you use them. Lilies are going to be spent as soon as you use any one of the above skills. So if you use your lilies on an Assize, you'll go back down to 0, and if you want to reduce the cooldown on Asylum, you'll need to build those lilies again. When you have one lily, the cooldown is reduced by a measly 4%. When you have 2 lilies, the cooldown is reduced by 10%, and when you have 3 lilies, the cooldown is reduced by 20%. In case you're wondering what Divine Benchen itself actually does, since we just mentioned it, it places a max health barrier on a single ally on a 1-minute cooldown. No MP cost, just an off-global cooldown barrier, and yes, it does stack with Eloquium. Another thing White Mages get are Stacks of Confession. Now, Stacks of Confession actually build on allies you heal using Cure 1 and Cure 2, so they're not stacks that you have as part of your user interface or anything. To expend these stacks, you use a new skill called Plenary Indulgence, which heals anyone nearby who has confession stacks on them. If you have no confession stacks, you don't get healed by this skill. Now, the potency of the heal on each party member scales with the number of confession stacks they have, up to a maximum of 3. This means that different party members may receive varying amounts of healing if they have a different number of stacks. It's on a super short cooldown of only 15 seconds, so it can be used fairly frequently, as long as you have confession stacks on targets nearby. However, keep in mind confession stacks only last 30 seconds unless they're refreshed by getting another stack. And finally, White Mage got a new skill called Thin Air, which just reduces the MP cost on all their spells to 0 for 10 seconds. That's a skill I wish lilies worked on. They also did get another new trait on top of the lilies, which is a passive they'll get in their mid-50s. When you get into your 60s, you also get Secrets of the Lily 2, which adds a 20% chance to reduce the cooldown on Assize or Asylum every time you critically heal with Cure 1 and 2. So that's a little bit more reliable of a cooldown reduction, since that's completely separate from the Lily stack cooldown reduction. And since we already talked about the skills that were thrown into the healer crossroll, let's cover what's in there before I give you my thoughts on White Mage, in case you couldn't already deduct what those are going to be. So Protect, Cleric Stance, Swift Cast, Sure Cast, and Asuna are all in the healer crossroll. We already went over some of these. Swift Cast, still the same. Asuna was taken off and thrown in the crossroll. Protect even, some of these used to be inherent skills, but no, now they're crossroll. Surecast, on the other hand, had a slight change where now it also makes you immune to several forms of CC for 10 seconds, which may actually be pretty useful for White Mage, or for the healers in general. On top of that, don't forget about the Cleric Stance changes. It is just a flat damage buff now. Lucid Dreaming is basically Shroud of Saints, but in the crossroll, so if you want Shroud of Saints as a White Mage now, you're going to have to take Lucid Dreaming. Yes, they still have a size, they have Thin Air now to work with their MP, but kind of sucks to lose it, don't you think? Eye for an Eye is the same as it was on Arcanist, but it's crossroll now. Largis is the same as Divine Seal, but crossroll. That's right, you don't even have Divine Seal anymore. You need to crossroll it if you want to get it. And finally, you have Rescue, which was seen in the Job Action trailer. That's a healer crossroll skill, and just lets you pull an ally to you as long as they're in combat. So, overall, I don't think I saw anything that made me feel better about the state of White Mage. In fact, I think it's even worse now than it was going into 4.0. They said they want to enforce the pure healer fantasy of a White Mage, and the tools it was given I feel are too gated. You have to be using Cure 1 and Cure 2 to effectively use Lilies or Confession stacks. They don't work off like the Hot of Regen or Medica 2. They don't proc on Medicas. They don't even proc on like a Tetra or standing in an Asylum bubble. They only proc on Cure 1 and 2. And I understand that if they procced off every heal, it'd probably get too ridiculous and it might actually be overpowered. But it's just so inefficient, I feel like. You know, how often are you just sitting there spamming Cure 1 on all these different targets to get them Confession stacks? I mean, if anything, Confession just turns into mostly a tank heal, because they're the ones you're going to be using Cure 1 and 2 on the most. Of course, that's a bit of hyperbole, but it just feels so not cohesive. I mean, maybe later on when you get the cooldown reduction on Assize and Asylum with every critical, but those are still just Cure 1 and Cure 2. Maybe that'll make it stronger, but from what I'm seeing here, I don't like what I see on White Mage at all. It feels like it's absolutely the weakest job, not just across the healer crossroll, but in terms of updates to all the jobs, might just be one of the weakest jobs in the entire game, especially when compared to its healer counterparts, who also got some crazy strong new healing and raid utility added on top of their powerful kits. It would be one thing if the new White Mage abilities just had insane healing potencies and turned you into a monster, but it just feels like you're hoping for cooldown reduction on your older skills in order to make up for that extra healing that the other people got in their kits. I'm just not a big fan of not only not giving them new raid utilities, other than a barrier that sits on a 60-second cooldown. Yes, it stacks with a Loquiam, and that's nice, but it's a 60-second cooldown for 15%. The tanks, Dark Knight and Paladin, can do better than that, practically. You know what I mean? It's just, I feel like so many things just don't make sense, and I really hope that what I read for all the abilities, I really hope that is changed by the time we get to June 16th, because I do not feel like they can roll that out as it is and not get an enormous amount of backlash from the community without people just basically saying, Astro Scholar, you know, it is what it is. And then what else happened? You know, White Mage, it still feels good to play. Like, I did the dungeon, I still love spamming Holy, I still love the Arrow 3, I love using Assize, Asylum, all the healing spells still feel good. It's just that nothing felt exciting to me. Nothing felt like it was a huge improvement over the way White Mage was before, and it barely felt like this whole pure healer fantasy was even being properly enforced in the first place. So please, Square Enix, give it a little bit more love before June 16th, because you took out its stone skin, you took out all the unique things it had and put them in crossroll because they're just too good across all the healers, and then you just didn't give them great new tools to begin with. So fingers crossed something changes before June 16th, because otherwise I'm not really digging White Mage, guys. That's going to be a wrap for this video. Would have been really short if not for my prolonged thoughts on the state of the job based on what I played, but I got to give my feedback somewhere. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned for all the other job videos that I'm doing based on the Media Tour, as well as stuff for after Stormblood's launch or just before it as well. Anyway, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.